Okay, welcome everybody. This is John here with ContraBIM, where we build tools, tutorials, and templates for ArchiCAD and some of our favorite AEC programs. Really we're doing this all for the purpose to help you be able to do more with BIM and really help deliver your projects quicker and more efficiently. Today I'm excited to be building a 3D site logistics plan in ArchiCAD. We're going to do this as quickly as possible and just try to add a bunch of different content and really just try to hit some of the highlights of what I typically add to 3D logistics plans. There's a bunch of different ways of doing logistics plans, whether in 2D or 3D format. But for me, I always really enjoy building them in ArchiCAD because you can really start texture mapping things and create a lot of interest and create something that's really immersive, where you can get into it and fly around, and also as you're setting up a site logistics plan, it also is the baseline for building models and doing a lot of other stuff with it. Okay, so what we're going to be covering today here is we're going to walk through the workflow of how to essentially bring in Google Earth imagery into ArchiCAD. So we're going to cover that real quickly. We'll create a 3D site mesh, and we'll actually map the Google Earth satellite imagery to that. We'll start setting up our boundaries for our site fencing, and we'll add in some pedestrian canopies. We'll do some different traffic barriers. We'll add in a tower crane, actually a tower crane from using a module from episode 1. If you missed that, you can go back and see what we did in episode 1 with building a tower crane. We'll also add in a Manlift. We'll add in some of the site facilities for trailers and different bins. And we also have some scaffolding objects we can add in, as well as some different 3D traffic paths. With that, let's go ahead and we will continue, and we will go ahead and jump into ArchiCAD now, and we will start setting up this project for 3D logistics. But before we jump into that though, make sure to subscribe to this channel if you like this type of content, and if you're working in ArchiCAD. We got a lot of interesting sessions coming up where we're going to be covering a lot of wide-ranging topics within construction management and utilizing BIM. Okay, let's jump over here now, and we're actually going to be reusing, in this case, a project that we built, just kind of a very conceptual concrete structure that we built actually in episode 2. And so what we're going to do here, and because we don't really have any specific site assigned to this, what I'm going to do is we'll actually take this and save this project out as a we're going to save it as a Colada or a Colada file, and this is the best format that I like using for bringing this into Google Earth. So what I want to do is I'm going to export this whole model, and I'm just going to overwrite this previous one that I have here, and I'm just going to save it. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually bring this project site into Google Earth, so that we can then select a site, and then from there we'll go and go ahead and start exporting some imagery. So let's go ahead, and what I have set up over here on my left is I'm just going to right click on my episode 5 folder, and we're going to add a model. And so I'm just going to go in and I'm going to browse for that cast in place structure, the .dae model. And so I'm going to just open this, and we'll let this run for a second. It usually kind of freezes for a second right when it's bringing it in, and let's see, there it goes. So what we're doing is we're just bringing in directly into Google Earth here, that project, and you can see it's as simple as that, just exporting. And actually, I was looking around here, and I was thinking this site might be good, but let's just kind of zoom out here. And what's nice is when you bring these in, you can take these models and drag them around and kind of test out different sites. So that site right there might work okay. Maybe a little bit pinched on this side, and it's pinched or clashing with that building there. So that site probably isn't big enough. But we can just grab these models in Google Earth and just literally drag them around. And I'm flying around right now with the 3D mouse, of course, so that allows me to grab things, move them, and we can even grab our handles here and start rotating our projects around also. So, okay, so a site like this would probably work as well. It's actually got a lot more room there to work with than what we probably need. So, you know what, I'll probably come back here and maybe we'll just stick with that original site where it was originally dropping in there. So, okay, so this will probably work just fine. It looks like we have enough space on all of our perimeters, so it's a little tight on the adjacent building there. But okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and we'll just use this site. So what I'm going to do now to just save this, I'm just going to call this my cast in place structure. Oh, cast in place structure, and we'll hit OK there. And okay, so I'm going to actually turn that off. And what we're going to do is we'll now export our essentially the imagery from this viewpoint, and we'll be bringing that into ArchiCAD. It's really the foundation and the basis for how we are going to be building the rest of our logistics here. So in order to get the best quality possible, I always like to toggle on and off my 3D buildings just to see the difference between how it's this area has been mapped with satellite imagery. So you can always check between the two, and there's pros and cons of both. Typically it's nice to be able to see all the roads, because obviously with the 3D buildings things start to get skewed a little bit. But in this case I'm just going to go ahead and I'll just use this 3D image as is. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I usually like to pick up a few blocks around my site in both directions. And so once I have the view that I like, I always like to get my roads as parallel as possible. And what I'll do is I'll actually, with the ruler, I always like just getting a ballpark number for what the width of this image actually is. So I'm just going to snap along this 9th Street in this case. And I'm just going to pull from one side to the other, and I'm looking for the dimension of that. So it looks like we're about 1,521 feet, and so that's the value I'm going to just make sure that I include in my image. So 1521, we'll just remember that, and I'm going to go to save an image, and we can set this to 4K, which is a high enough resolution in this case. And yeah, we have all of our options turned off, but if we did want to include other elements to this image, we could do that as well. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and save, and I'm going to call this 1521. You can actually see that I had saved another one from before when I was running through this workflow. But okay, so there we go. And yeah, so next step is let's go back to ArchiCAD here. And I'm just going to actually go to a worksheet that I have set up for bringing in that Google Earth imagery. And I'm going to go under my file, external content, place external drawing. And we will jump into our reference files here under our textures, and we'll grab that, that 1521. And so I'm going to open that up and place that. And then real quickly, if I want to just simply scale this site, I can do a Control K, which allows me to just snap from one corner to the other and then enter the value of that dimension. So again, I'm going to be using 1521, and I'll hit OK. And then what I can do from here is maybe I'll just go to my we'll just go to my shell superstructure, and I'll just turn on my trace reference for my first floor, and so that way we can see how we're comparing with our project site. So if I fade out the my active view, I can see where my my trace reference is located. So I'm just going to grab about the corner here, and let's see here. I'm just going to drag this, and we're going to snap it just right about down to the corner about here. And it's sure not wanting to move very well. There we go. We kind of got stuck there. I'm going to turn off this trace reference for a second. Oh, it's not liking something there. Anyway, we're going to move this, and I'm going to drag this whole thing down, and we'll just snap that to my 0 point there. And I'm going to zoom in, and let's just try this again. It was really kind of rough right there. So something it didn't like something I was doing. So to kind of balance this in the middle of the site now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually shift this over just slightly. So I'm going to select my drawing, and we are just going to move it over. Gosh, what is going on with that? Usually I don't run into this type of issue, but today is, of course, a day where I am running into an issue. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're just going to manually push this over. For whatever reason, it's not liking having that trace reference on today. It might be just because the imagery is a high resolution. I've noticed before that sometimes it really does not like having super high resolution imagery. But yeah, in the past it hasn't been an issue like that, so I don't know why we're running into that today. But anyway, okay, so there we go. We have this now in essentially the location of our site. I'm going to go back to 2D here, and hopefully we don't run into that same issue from this direction. So let's go as a show as trace reference, and we'll turn this on. And okay, so there we go. We're running much quicker on this side. There's something up with that worksheet maybe. Okay, so now that we have this in, we've essentially placed our Google Earth imagery in relation to our project site. So if we go to 3D though, we don't have any of this in 3D. So our next step here is we need to create a 3D mesh. And what I'm actually going to do at this point is I'm going to actually bring in a I'm going to be bringing in a module that I've saved off from my library. And I think I actually have it open here. I'll show you what I have in it just real quickly. I'm going to pull this over. So what I've done is I've set up kind of a few basic 3D elements that we're going to be working with today. And all I've done is gone through and kind of pulled them out of my library and created an individual module here. So what I'm going to be doing is we'll actually just take the module that we had created there, and we have two ways of bringing that in. Either we can drag and drop it in and it's going to paste all those elements into this working file, or we can go up here under our external content and we can place that as a hot link. And so we're going to do that in this case, and I've already done this before, so I'm just going to select the one that I've already entered. I like giving it a master ID of just logistics with an underscore and assigning this all to a hot link module for just my catalog items, and I'm going to keep my elevations as in the story structure of the hotlink source. So I'm not going to be adjusting any of those elements to the project because most of them are objects anyway, so we don't really need to do much modification in that respect. So I'm going to go ahead and place this, and it's going to should prompt me here in a second for what happened there. So something happened, and I think what it did is that did not work as I wanted. So I'm going to, let's do this one more time. I think I'd maybe saved off this module as just an individual item. I think it just saved it's just that one item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Control-C and copy this entire thing, and then from here I'm going to do a save as. And we will just overwrite that logistics module that we're working with. I'm going to save that, replace it, and we'll go back to our working file, and let's try this again because that certainly wasn't what we wanted. Place hot link, go in. I'm going to use that same module because I overwrote it, so it should be fine. And let's place it. And we'll do center of current view. And there we go. and I'm just going to pull this off down to the edge of my site here so that it's out of my imagery, and I'll just click outside, and there we go. So now that we've brought that in, we now have essentially that whole module in our project now, and we can see that we have some trailers in here. We have an object for a toilet. There's some 3D paths which are kind of interesting for doing different traffic paths, and it's actually interesting if you turn off the 3D style. You can kind of get it to look like almost like arrows when you're working with just a texture that has some transparency to it. So we'll play around with those and create some paths. I got a few objects in here for a Manlift that we'll be adding. We have a few different types of barricades here. So there's barricades for site fencing. We got some traffic barricades. We got some K-rail. We got some different types of canopies that we can add for pedestrians. We got some scaffolding elements, and there's even a placing boom in this particular module that we brought in. But where we wanted to jump back to is if we just go to 2D here, and we're just going to zoom in. So I have a site aerial topography set up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up the settings of that mesh, and I'm going to actually just zoom out, and I'm going to trace right over that drawing that we are now referencing. So I'm going to grab this, our site mesh that we just created. I'm going to hit F5 to isolate it in 3D. And so now we have that mesh in here. And so our final step is to go into our surfaces, and under my surface for Google Earth aerial imagery, I always use the same surface for bringing in all the different textures. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my textures. I'm going to grab that Google Earth 1521. I'm going to open it, and we're going to essentially just load that imagery in and assign it to this texture. And so the last step here is we'll just change our size again to 1521, and it'll automatically set our other dimension there. And if we hit, I'm just going to turn on a few of these. So we have our transparency turned on, and so I'm going to hit OK. And okay, so now we have our 3D mesh with that texture that we had saved off. But we can see that if we zoom in here, we can actually see our 0 point, and we actually need to do one more step here of aligning that to our mesh. So under Document, Creative Imaging, Align 3D Texture, if we just set the origin at this bottom left-hand corner here, that will essentially redefine where the origin of that texture is, and we can see that we're now fully aligned with our project site. So if I hit F5, we'll bring back our entire project, and there we go. So now we have a our building with our 3D mesh, and yeah. So let's continue, and let's see what our next one is. So okay, so now that we've created our 3D mesh, let's go in and we will add some fence lines, and we'll just kind of define the boundary of this particular project site. So I'm going to go back to 2D, and we had seen that there's several different options for creating 3D fences, and actually in this case there's a few here, and some are actually beams. If I pick up these settings, we can see that that's a beam, and so if I'm working with a site that has different elevations and slopes to it, then I will always use a beam just because it allows you to snap it to those elevations and slope it as needed. So there's, but in this case we'll probably just use, I'm kind of liking this one right here, this wall with kind of this dashed line around it. So I'm going to pick up the parameters from my hotlink module of that particular element, and I'm going to come up here and just kind of look at my site here and really go in and start drawing out the boundaries that I might want to use. So what we might do here is, let's see here. So it looks like we have a one-way street coming this way. And In this case, we probably want to maintain having some access for pedestrians on the street. So I might just start from the corner of this building here and maybe come out. What's the width there? It looks like we have, it's a pretty wide sidewalk, almost 18 feet. So I'm going to leave maybe we'll just come out about, let's go 12 feet. And we'll come straight down, so we'll leave a bit of a sidewalk there. We could always take out that parking lane. Actually, maybe that's a better idea. Let's do that. We can push the pedestrian traffic into that parking lane. We can take that parking lane over, and we'll bring this all the way down here, and we'll leave just a little location here for pedestrian traffic coming across this way. But on this side of our site, well, let's take the entire sidewalk so that we'll push people across the street and they can come back on this side or cross down here. And yeah, just doing this real quickly. Let's just kind of map things out. We can modify things as we get into it a little further. And you know what? Looking at those walls there, I might change my pen color to be just a little brighter green so it stands out. And we can always fade out our background or our trace reference slightly. So, okay, so from there, I'm probably going to add in, let's just grab that that K-rail with the fencing on top of it. And I'm just going to, you can select elements out of your module. And as long as you're in suspend elements, you can grab those and actually just drag them and copy them. And so what we'll do here is let's just add in, we'll kind of do what's similar to this side over here where they have a K-rail running essentially directly along the, they're allowing 2 lanes of traffic there with a turn lane. Actually, it looks like a lane for backing up into the site there. So what we'll do is let's just add in some K-rail along this line here. And what I'll do is I'm going to do a multiply. And let's measure this. I believe these are 10 feet in spacing. So we'll just take that and we will spread this. And we'll just pull this all the way down to about there. And I'll actually, because that lane appears to be rotated slightly, I'm going to come up on this side, probably push this over a little bit, give it a little bit extra space there, and I'll just rotate this whole thing so that, oh, let's see, I copied by accident. Let's rotate, and we'll just move all those up. Okay, so now that we have, let's go back to our 3D here. I'm just going to do a marquee around this. So with those contour lines turned on, those K-rails look black from a distance, but as we get closer, we can see that they're white. And I'm going to just grab that beam element, and I'm going to take this, and we'll just pull it all the way down, and we'll just snap it right to the center line, right about there. And okay, so now we have a K-rail with a fence line along that entire distance. So, okay, so there we go. I might actually take this fence line and maybe we'll extend it a little bit here and we'll continue it into our site slightly. And so because this is a one-way road going this direction, maybe I'll leave this as a traffic lane to enter into my site in this direction. And of course we're taking the parking lane here, but that's a probably a nice workflow for unloading material and staging it here before bringing it onto the site. So, okay, well, let's go ahead and we can actually just pick up this wall. And just like we did on this end, we can draw this in 3D. And so we'll just pick from right here and maybe we'll kind of carve out a little corner here. It looks like this is the corner of that lot. And since our building is pushed back a little bit here, we can come all the way over, and I'm going to actually hit F5 here and bring back the rest of my site. And in this case, it's a little bit tough to tell where that property line might be, but maybe we'll just take over a little, maybe we'll just take up to, looks like that's a driveway entering right there. So we'll just take all the way up to this point, And I'm going to pick up from right there, and we'll just grab here, and we'll just complete this all the way over. A little tough to see what the boundary is there, but I'll just pull this all the way down, and it looks like there's a site boundary already there. So we probably don't need our fence to continue along there, because there is what appears to be a just the edge of the building there. So probably don't need a fence there. So okay, let's go back to 2D now, and there we can see our entire essentially our site boundary. And maybe over here, let's I'm gonna actually split this one right about there, just by using our little axe tool, and we'll pull this down, and we'll just create a secondary entrance on this side over here. Flip that around. Okay, so now we have an entrance for coming in and exiting from our site. And then also, let's see, if this is one-way traffic coming this way, then this must be one-way traffic coming this way. So at this point, we could, if we're working in the back here, that's probably a nice area for staging of, some trailers and some bins. So what I might do is probably just grab this trailer element that I have here, and let's just place it in the back. And maybe we want it to be a little wider in this case. Maybe we got room for a double wide, so maybe we'll go, I don't know, 24 feet. So it skewed that element a little bit, but that's okay. Maybe we'll kind of snap it right there. And let's add maybe a few little subcontractor trailers as well. So we can drop one there. We can add a few there. Leave some area for parking. Yeah, maybe we'll just add a few of these just right along our fence line here. And okay, that's probably good enough. So let's jump to 3D and see how we're looking. So got our trailers, got a few bins in there. We should probably add in some toilets. So we had a toilet element down here, and I realize now that I'm kind of jumping out of the order of what I originally said we would do, but that's okay. We'll just continue, and we'll let's add a toilet down on. Probably need one down on this side. Just stick one right there. So we got a few up here, one there, and we can add one over here just because it's easy to do so right now. Okay, so let's see. So we've added, we got our site topography in there. We got our 3D mesh. We got our fence lines. We've added some traffic barriers on this side. And what I might do is, because you have traffic rolling this way, you don't want someone to mistakenly drive right into a K-rail. That wouldn't be good. I do have another soft traffic barrier, or a plastic barrier that maybe will, let's get rid of that K-rail and let's just replace it with maybe a few of these guys. So add in maybe 3 of them there. Grab those. And we can just give it a slight rotation. And maybe this one on the end, we can probably shrink that up and just skew it in this case. Okay, so let's check that in 3D and see how that looks. So, okay, so at least we have a bit more of a soft barrier right there, so no cars are gonna crash into that. And okay, so one other thing I might do at this point is, in 2D here, it's kind of a little bit too much information to look at. So one thing I might do to kind of simplify this plan is maybe grab just a site clearing and grubbing mesh, which is a nice way of just calculating the area of your site and how much demo you might have. But it's also a way of really kind of making your site area pop out. So I'm going to go in here and we'll just kind of hug the corner of our site, and I'm going to extend this up, and I'm just going to set this at -1 inch because my I didn't mention that before, but my Google Earth imagery, I always like setting it just a few inches below so that if I have a slab here, or in this case an area for clearing and grubbing, it's kind of layered in there nicely so that we can then see the site area there without it being overlapping. And in this area over here, maybe I'll split this just by drawing a line there, and maybe we'll just leave this as let's just leave that as pavement. So it's always nice to keep pavement under your trailers and your parking areas. So we'll just turn that back. But at the same time, it's giving us our clearing and grubbing calculation if we wanted it. So, okay, so there we go. We got all of that in there. And, okay, so I think at this point, let's see. I think let's add in, we'll go back to our module here. And I have a few different types of pedestrian canopies. I'll do a marquee around this. And so one of the types is just kind of like a prefabricated modular type, and that's probably a little better to use in this scenario. But I also have another type of element which is more of a traditional scaffolding type of object, and this is actually just a exploded or a converted morph from the built-in scaffold tool within ArchiCAD. And so, yeah, this is just, an object that these are still in the morph format, so we could turn those back into an object if we wanted. But in this case today, let's just, we'll use our simplified or our object here, our more modular one. So I'm just going to grab this and we'll copy off version of it. And I'm going to flip this around, and it's a little tough to tell which side is the side that's open. So I'm just going to grab this entire length here. We'll do a marquee, and we'll fly in here. And yep, of course I got that backwards, so we'll just mirror it real quickly. And okay, so from one point to another here, what's our length on this? So looks like it's 6'1", and what we can do here is let's just do an increment and spread. And so in this case, vertical displacement, I'm going to turn that off because I don't need that, and we'll just do a simple version of this. So I'm going to pull it here, snap, and then at this point I can just pull it the rest of the way. So okay, so there we go. Added in a pedestrian canopy, and there we go. We could of course add one on this side as well, but since that's pushed back probably far enough away from our building there in this particular case, we probably don't need it there. Okay, so we're starting to get a few more elements in here. Let's think about real quickly kind of where we might want to put our Manlift. So just in terms of unloading and having access to the entire face of the building, obviously we're not going to put a Manlift anywhere over here because we'd have to punch through our decks, which isn't ideal. We really have two options for placing a Manlift in this particular case. We could either go on this face right here, or we could do on this face over on this side, which actually both sides would probably work okay. Just the way the site's working, let's see how much space we might have. We can always drop in 2 there just as an option 1 and an option 2. So I'm going to go down, and in this case I'm going to grab a few elements here. I'm actually going to be using we'll create like a dual Manlift, And so if it's a single man lift, I might use this one where it's bracing off to the side. But in this case, we'll just use our center brace, and we'll kind of just grab our main tower element there. And okay, so we'll go ahead and I'm going to copy this, and let's pull this up here, and we'll just kind of see how much space we have. So that actually probably is enough space from the edge of our building. And since this whole site is kind of, that street right there is kind of angled a little bit, I think probably down here is probably a best location. So let's just rearrange these real quickly. These are just objects that I created, and we actually have points here for snapping it. I believe that's to the edge of my decks all the way up, but something we can check and look at in 3D. So I'm going to pull this up. We'll leave maybe 3 inches of a gap there. And I'm actually just going to mirror it around so that we got a dual man lift. And I'll probably just center these up between my column spacing here. So I'm going to drag this over, snap it to that grid. And then since it's 25 feet here, I'll just go 12.5 feet. So now we're centered directly on there. And let's just look at, we'll just look at one little section of this. I would say that probably is enough space depending on how you load into that. So you got a good 10 feet there. It might be a little bit tight, but we can play around with this and see. But okay, so do a marquee there. Probably just pull these a little bit out of the dirt. And depending on what man lift you end up with, you typically either need to ramp up to them, or you have to create a pit for them. So in this case, it's probably a ramping type situation, but we're not going to go into that much detail today on some of these elements just because for the sake of time. I definitely want to spend, do a few other tutorials really diving into the details of how to approach building man lifts. And we'll actually probably bring in some crane and man lift equipment rental companies to really talk about their approach and understand some of those specifics that determine how they select their equipment and apply it to their projects. But in this case, we're just going to do this really quickly, and I'm just going to take that one element here and we'll just multiply this up. So again, I'm going to be using this increment and spread just like we did with our canopy, and instead I'm going to be using elevate in this scenario. So we're going to click right there. I'm going to click to that point, and then we'll just pull this all the way up, and we'll make sure that we're high enough that that we got enough room at the top there if we want to overrun our top elevation, top deck in that case. So okay, so there we go. If we bring back this whole thing, we could actually just take our brace element here, and we'll just snap a few of these in. I think they typically go every few stories, so something we could probably look up online, but oh, let's see there. I think we're aligned going up. Actually, in this case, we're not aligned. I can actually see that the decks in this case are protruding out slightly. So I could actually just take this element here and shrink it up. So pull this over and just try to get that to align about right. It's more for a visual than actually detailing that out. But what's more of an issue in this case is the fact that our actual cabs need to be pushed out probably a foot in this case, just so we're clearing. Okay. So we can set these at really any level that we want. And okay, so that's one option for how we might set these up. I'm just going to click and we'll just copy up a few more. And I'm just snapping these to my specific floors that I want them on. They're going to all show up on the same level, which is kind of nice. But if we had specific things in our decks that we needed to coordinate, then certainly we might. I'm going to actually center this up. I see that one got a little bit off there. If we were coordinating, PT cables and things in the decks like that, then we might really want these on each floor to add those embeds, if they are embeds, into each coordination level. But for the purposes of today, we're going to be doing this as quick as possible. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this whole thing, and we'll just kind of do an option A, option B. So I'm going to just grab all of this, and we'll just snap it over on this side. I'm going to snap it to that column and rotate it out. And again, we might have to play with the edges of the deck there, but let's see how it looks on this side. So again, yeah, same scenario where I think we had a deck down here. In this case, that would be an issue, and something like this. For today's case, I'm just going to push it back. But yeah, if you have different levels of if your deck edges varies as you go up, a lot of the times you'll just have to scaffold to kind of fill the gaps between the face of your Manlift cab and your unloading portion on your deck. So sometimes you have to add scaffolding in there to just bridge the gap between the two. But okay, so there we go. We got two Manlift options. I'll probably talk with the entire team and understand what scenario would really be ideal in this case. I'd probably still lean towards this side if there was enough space, but this side is okay also. And yeah, okay, so next step here is I actually want to add in the tower crane now, because that's one of the main features or logistical equipment that we in this type of project will always want to have. So we got a few different options for placing the tower crane, but the first step is let's just get the crane in here. And I'm going to actually open up real quickly just to show you what we're bringing in. So this is the file from our episode 1, and it's actually a simplified version of it where I've just taken specific elements and pulled them out. And what I've done is I've just, if you select all these, you can do a file and save selection as a module. So that's what I've done in this case. So these are all the contents that we'll be bringing through. And so in 2D here, I'm going to just kind of zoom out, and I'm going to go to my module. And so I got my tower crane module, and I'm just going to, in this case, instead of linking it as a hot link, I'm just going to drag and drop it right into my project. And I'm going to match up my street level right there. And I can see that from my my reference module file, there were elements on essentially foundation, street, lower brace, upper brace, and a tower platform. So those are now being mapped to our first 4 levels and our foundations. So there's certainly going to be some modification in elevation of these elements once we bring them in, but that's pretty easy to do once we are in here. So okay, so where is it? Let's go to 3D and get an idea. Okay, so we can see that we have our crane element in here now. And yeah, because our elevations and our stories were quite a bit different, there's going to be some stuff here that we need to really check out. But first thing is, let's actually just take our tower crane element. And I can see there's actually a few different things. We got a jumper here. So let's take that and we'll just pull that down for the moment. We got our crane element, or a tower element, which I'm actually just going to delete in this case. And I'm just going to grab my entire jib assembly. And let's just elevate this to be at about the right level. So hook height in this case, I typically go about 20 feet above your highest elevation. So that would be snapping my hook height to the tallest point in this structure as it's currently modeled. And from there, let's just push it up 20 feet. And so that's probably about where we want to be in terms of elevation. And so I'm going to build this whole thing to the side, and then I'm going to actually drag it in, and we'll place it, and we'll talk about where we want it here in a few minutes. So okay, so with this element here, this jumper, that's always going to be, or most of the time it's going to be located right at the top. So I'm just going to pull that up for the moment. This element here, we can do another elevate, increment, and spread. And so I'm going to just click from that point. 19'2" is my height. And so we'll just pull that all the way up. And in this case, we can actually see that it's going up into our base, or sorry, not our base, our jib assembly up there. So I'm going to actually do a slight adjustment here. And we'll just grab all that. And I'm going to snap from, I believe it's about, if I go from this point, we just pull it all the way up. We want this element right about here to snap right on top. So I'm going to just hover. Let's just grab from, doesn't want to give me a point, but we can go to there. And then it looks like we're probably minus 8 inches. Looks like that's exactly what it needed to be. So, okay. So there we go. Certainly our jumper or our climbing unit it can really be at any elevation we want it here, but we'll snap that right there just for graphical purposes. Okay, and we also have a few other elements here. It's actually bringing over the whole tie-in assembly, and I believe these are individual. Yeah, this is the version that has individual components, which is kind of nice if we need to make a modification here. But of course you need to consult your tower crane charts and whoever your equipment supplier is to understand, one, if you need bracing or if you're over the maximum height where you then would need additional tie-ins. So sometimes you can go freestanding, but if you're over a specific height, then you got to tie it into the structure. So in this case, I'm going to just grab all these elements right there, and we'll just group them for now. And okay, so we'll actually grab this entire assembly, and I can do so just by selecting over them. And so for placement in this particular site, you typically don't want your crane on the same side as your manlift, because it makes it a little bit more complicated, I believe, for the jumping and the disassembly. So in this case, we might just, maybe we'll put it inboard and have a block out running through our structure. So maybe we'll place it maybe about right there in the center so that we can still reach all of our corners. And yeah, in order to do that, I'm going to group this entire thing. So sometimes you want to be careful how much you're grouping at once, because that can start to load down your file. But for this particular scenario, let's turn on just one of our upper stories so we can see the outline of our tower. So I'm going to show as a trace reference. And we'll turn off our fills. And so I'm going to grab my element there, and if I go to my control find, we can see how many we have turned on, but I'm going to do an Alt-G so that it picks up all of them. So now I'm moving my entire crane element, and these should all move regardless of what story they're located on. And let's just set it probably about right there. And actually, if we go up a story, we can then see where our brace structure is. So maybe from this point, I might just give this a rotation. And again, we're rotating the entire crane right now. We can't see the entire crane, but we're rotating the full crane. And we can snap this about right there. And okay, so that probably is a decent placement for a crane in this case. Let's go to 3D. And so we can see there the full crane has been moved. Our brace element is way down here. So what we could actually do is I'm going to do a suspend groups. And actually, now that I have it pretty close to where I want it, I'm going to actually ungroup these one level. And then that way I can grab these and, yeah, that didn't work. Thought I could ungroup all those together, but okay. So hopefully I get lucky with my selection. There we go. So I'm going to group these again. And let's just pull these up and we can snap them. Probably need maybe 2 in this case. So maybe we'll snap one right there to, I believe that was our 10th story. So if we change these now, of course it's going to change our elevation of them, but let's just see what happens there. So it changed several of those. So again, we will, since it's on our 10th story, I'm just going to hit 0 and that should drop them back down. Okay, so there we go. And of course from here, I'm going to just copy it up one, and I'm going to change this to my 11th story, and I'm going to hit 0 on these so that they drop back down. And then we can change these to really any story we want. So if we want them on one of our top stories, we'll just assign these to our 20th story, and there we go. So that looks pretty good. Let's just take a quick look here at our range. And, you know, now that I'm looking at it here, all these elements on the top, should have thought about this a little bit more before I started bringing all these in. So I really want these to show up probably on my street level as well as my other levels. So let's see if we can modify this to maybe a custom setting. Let's just set it to all stories for right now. So that's going to change it for all these elements. So hopefully that gives us a view on each of our different stories here. It's not showing up on our lower story. It's because of our combination there. So let's just turn on our logistics for our crane. And not sure why that's not showing up on all of them. Something that in this case you really need to go through and pay attention to which ones are on. Oh, that's why. That's why. So all these, and I've realized that's a flaw that came through from our module. But what I want to do is I'm actually going to just grab this archive layer, and so there were elements within this module that I had forgot to turn back on to my crane layer in that file that we were working on, and in that episode 1 file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just do hide others, so that we're just looking at what's on that archive layer. And I'm going to grab all these. If I do a Control-Shift-T, I can go into edit all those elements, and we'll just change these to my cranes, and we'll hit OK. And so now if we're looking at it on our street level, since we assign those to all stories, that we can now see that crane there. So one thing that's probably really helpful at this case is to just kind of measure where we are coming from. And I'm going to change the settings on this this circle. Let's just change the settings, and we're going to snap right from that center point. And so this is the full length of our potential reach, which is, yeah, I think about 265 is, if I recall correctly, is about where we had it, which is actually much larger than what we really need. So, and this is probably a good thing to really do before you start, or pick your final placement of your crane. But in this case, I might want to consider having that crane reach Not just the entire extent of the building itself, which you can see here approximately by the grids, but actually having that extend out and go into our potential staging areas, so that if we pull this out, we can see here that if we're going at, say, like a 210-foot radius, that gives us really great coverage for picking up down on this street side. It also allows us to pick over from this side as well as our staging area over here. So, and it even gives us opportunity from this side, but in that case, probably don't really need it. But as long as we're covering our entire building, then we should be okay here. And yeah, so I'm going to pull this out, and maybe we'll just go about, let's just set it at 215 for right now. And so what we can actually do is, because we have a few extra elements here, what we can do is we can start trimming this crane down actually. So if we only need to pick to that 215 length, it looks like we could get rid of that element where we don't need that one. And can we get rid of 2? Probably. So we could really actually shorten this crane up. Let's take a look at it in 3D, and we'll just do a show all. And so yeah, I believe we can get rid of both of these elements and still really have the length that we need. So let's do that. We'll delete those. I might need to make some modifications to that line work that I have that represented the line on there. So okay, so that's pulling these in, and you know what, I'm gonna undo that, and we'll just delete one, just so that we have a little bit extra. So we'll get rid of that segment. I'm gonna grab all of these. In these elements here, I added into the object, just going into the 2D symbol, a reference line that allows me to really just snap these from one to another. So that's a nice way of just giving yourself the flexibility of snapping elements together. So our radius in this case now is actually, I'm going to delete that. And what I sometimes like doing is with these cranes is I like adding a equipment, where is it? Equipment range. And by using the this geometry method of the center point radius, we can actually just give ourselves a 3D reference point here. And let's show that layer, and we'll just pull this out here and to about our max point. So we're about 2, let's go to 235 as probably our max reach point. And so because our last settings were on our fence from there, that certainly is not what we really want to see. But maybe I'll just make this like a glass color and make it, oh, I don't know, let's make it, we can either go vertical or horizontal with this orientation. So maybe I'll just go like 2 feet wide and maybe just like 2 inches tall. And let's see what that gives us in 3D here. So that was our marquee. Grabbing these now, and I like elevating these essentially just up to my hook height. So there we go. So that's giving us a nice view of our reach. And let's just turn everything on. And maybe we'll just change our contour pen here because I'm not really liking that green. So maybe we'll just make it an orange. And okay, so there we go. That's actually looking pretty good, all except for these elements here, which I really don't need them in this particular view. It's kind of nice to have that little extra detail, but in this case it's wrong, so we'll just delete those for now. And okay, so if we wanted, we could even create a few different few different dimensions on this. So we did to 235 there. So if we pull this in, we could go to, say, 200. Let's do a copy of this by hitting Control. We could go to 200. Oh. Snapping these in. Can I offset both at once? It doesn't look like it. It looks like it just wants to push them all. So we'll just go 150. It is kind of a nice visual indicator to see what your different lengths are. And then sometimes what I'll do here, I keep screwing that up. Okay, make sure I'm copying to 150. So sometimes I'll actually add in like the tonnage on those so that I can really see and compare the reaches and distances to what some of my my different maximum weights might be. But okay, so we're starting to kind of fill this logistics plan out. One other thing that we could do is let's, in this particular view, we might want to add in to the very top here is that going to work? I don't know if that copied over. I think sometimes it's a little funky trying to copy out of a 3D view from your module. Actually, this is just far too much to look at. I'm going to undo those, and let's just on this here, I'm just going to, let's just do a just do an outlines only, and so that cleaned that up a little bit. Okay, so let's go down, and I want to make sure that my layer is turned on for this, and I'm going to grab my placing boom, and we'll just add a placing boom in this case. So I'll probably want my placing boom, a lot of the times they're located actually on the formwork system that's being built for the core. But a lot of the times they're offset also. And from this point, let's just create another little radius from the center here. And we have about a 95-foot reach on this particular object. So from there, this will help me find where the best placement is. Obviously, we're not going to cover the entire structure here, but by moving this around, we can get a little bit closer here. At least we're covering the majority of our tower. And for the remaining elements there, you know, maybe in this case, we'll just snap it right there. And we'll just assume this is a placing boom that's integrated into the formwork system. So last thing we would want to do on that front is if we come in here, let's just grab that object and pull it straight up, and we'll just snap it right there for now. And so that's probably the max height there. So of course you need to be somewhat cautious, you know, conflicting between your crane hook heights and the other equipment on your site, but that's you know, that applies to any type of project. So okay, so there we go. We got our quite a few different elements in here, and let's see what else we had that maybe we haven't hit yet. So just running down the list, we got our Google Earth imagery that's in there, got our 3D site mesh, we added our fence lines, we added a pedestrian canopy over on this side here. We got our traffic barriers and our K-rail added in there. We've added a tower crane, of course. We've added our man lifts in. 2 options for man lifts, which is just nice visually to see. Our trailers and bins, we did add a few in here. And while we're looking at this, we could probably, let's just copy one of these over, and let's go into our library here, and we'll just add a few other things. So under this site and equipment, library. It's one of those old libraries. I think it came out with maybe version 10 or 11, and there's actually a bunch of different objects in here that we can use. But what I'm going to go down here and select is certainly we could add a bunch of different things for different dumpsters and just using these objects. But what I'm going to add is, let's just add in a recycling dumpster. And I will override this with just we'll just do like a kind of a glass green. And probably need to change that contour pen. So, and maybe we'll just add these somewhere where it's close to our building. And yeah, so we can add one right there, and let's change that contour pen. And maybe we have kind of a dual locations on our trash. So, okay, so we can pick them up from there. And on the other side, we did add in toilets already, so we got several toilets in there. And what else we got? Oh, the traffic controls. Okay. So one thing that we could do is, and we haven't really talked about it much today, but something I use a lot when I'm building 3D logistics plans like this, and that is to actually use SketchUp objects and from Google Warehouse. So one of the things that we'll do today is I just wanted to add in maybe a few trucks right here to kind of simulate our traffic flow. So under here, I believe this is the one that I'm really looking for, which is kind of a flatbed truck. So I'm going to go to my 2D view, and let's go and we'll grab that object, and hopefully this is the one that I'm thinking of. And let's drag and drop that in. And so I'm just going to pull it out to the side, and we'll see how that looks. There's a 6 megabyte SketchUp file, so probably quite a bit of detail on this. So it's converting to GDL. And okay, there we go. That is the flatbed I was looking for, or the semi. So let's come in here, and not too heavy, but a little heavy. So okay, so there we go. We can add this in here. Maybe we have a few of them. We could also add it in over here. This might be a little bit tough to pull into and back out of, but that could be another option. Not impossible. So we could add just a few trucks in there. And let's see how we're looking. So okay, so yeah, that's a pretty detailed object there. I'm liking that. I'm not necessarily liking how intense that red contour pen looks from afar, but we can of course change that to really anything. Change it to blue, and then of course the further you get away, the bluer it looks, but as you zoom in, it's a pretty cool object actually. So if we turn off our contours, obviously that cleans up that element as well as everything else. So but if you're doing a 3D view from afar and you're annotating in either a layout within ArchiCAD or just by publishing an image, it's kind of nice to have those contours on, because it really makes things pop, especially if you want to do some very more visual presentation type views with, you know, black pen or black backgrounds and whatnot. So okay, so there we go. What else is over here in our little inventory box? So maybe we'll add in some scaffolding real quick. And so where is it? Okay, so let's grab, essentially we have two objects here. This is our base scaffolding object. This is part of the that site and equipment object library. And so we're going to be using this object as well as a stair tower that I had created. So let's grab both of these, and we'll just start by, oh, where do we want to scaffold? We're not obviously going to scaffold this entire building, but maybe we'll just do like a few faces around the garage. So let's set this up where, in a project of this type, you might not even need scaffolding at all. But we'll just set that right about there, and you probably have a stair tower just kind of built right off the edge of it. And let's go to, we'll just pick up this entire face. And we'll go back to our different view. And okay, so we need to increase the height of this. And of course we'd want to, depending on what you're putting on this, like if this had some fancy facade system that you need scaffolding for, then obviously that's probably the only time you would install scaffolding, only if you need it. But in this case, we'll just show you how to use this element. And so there's a few settings here that are kind of interesting. One is whether it's an end element. So if you uncheck this, you can see that half those elements will go away. So actually, as we take this and we copy it, we're going to want to use this so that we're not duplicating our frames. Our base element height, in this case, I think we might be about 12 feet to get to that first level. But, you know, maybe we'll just go 10 feet, and you can adjust these accordingly. And then let's just go 6 levels of this and see how that looks. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Maybe we'll go just 12 feet there and get that top level pretty much aligned with the top of our slab. Maybe we'll go 8'6" for each element height. That pushes all of it up, and if we're doing that, then maybe 10 feet was fine for the bottom. So, okay, so you can see how easy it is to just adjust those very quickly. I'm going to actually just mirror this so that I have my end element over here, and we can actually just pull this. Oh, we'll just start from this side and pull this over just slightly. And okay, so from one point to another here, looks like we're at 9'10". So I'm going to use my increment and spread again. We'll drag this time, and we're just going to click from this point to there, and then we're just going to pull it along that entire face of the project. And on this side here, that actually lines up pretty good with the face there. This would be one scenario where you would actually want that to be an end element. So we can clean that up real quick. Of course, we don't want our toilet in the middle right there, so let's grab those elements and oh, what's it doing? Is that still as part of, I think it's on a lock layer or something. What's going on there? I feel like that might actually be like a duplicate from my module, which is weird. I didn't think they were copying like that. Huh. Interesting. I'm going to have to play around with that later. Okay, so let's just finish this out. We won't do this around the entire thing, but once you get these elements in here, you can really just start rolling with it quickly. And so I'm going to take it from this point, and we'll of course want to copy it. And whenever you're laying out scaffolding like this, of course there's going to be a little give and take on the ends. So with some of these, you could probably just grab this element and even change the shape of it. So axis distance, I think we can probably bump this up to maybe 12 feet and probably makes that a little longer. So yes, you can adjust those as needed. And from here, we will again use that increment and spread. And so we'll just take this all the way over. We'll just take it over to probably about where our building starts. And who knows, maybe they do the rest of that just by different lifts. And okay, so at least we got some of the scaffolding in there. So I think kind of get the point for how we can quickly add scaffolding to the project. So okay, one other thing, need that stair tower. So let's elevate it. Go for this point up. And we'll just copy that all the way up. Okay. So, of course, we're not really detailing this out to the point where everything is matching up perfectly, but really the point was to do this as quick as possible today and just add a bunch of different things to it. So, okay. So, is there anything else that we want to add to this project? So, Dave, I see the question there, and the question about do I share these files? I do share these files, and I share them with my with the network. So if you're interested in using any of these types of files, these example files, literally the same files that I'm working with right now from these weekly tutorials, then you can get access to all those by joining the Contribim network. And it's not just these example files, but it's also all the base template files that that has all the functionality built within these. Because right now we're really just looking at site logistics and some of these specific views of our model, but there's a lot of stuff built in these templates for all different types of reporting. And so yeah, if you want to use these types of templates and you see a use on your projects, then message me, send me an email, give me a call, and yeah, we can get you signed up on the network where you can access all of this stuff. So okay, yeah, thanks for that question. And okay, so one last thing that I think we're going to add in here is we talked a little bit about the paths here. And I'm actually going to change my view to logistics, and I have a few different view settings here, and you can see that my path actually changed in this case. And so what I typically do is I like using the light blue for pedestrians. So what we'll do is, why didn't that pick up? I want to grab my, in this case it's a beam, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually, let's turn on our Google Earth imagery as a trace reference. And so we'll just draw with this beam some of the pedestrian paths. So from all the way over here, I might just draw with the connected or the chained version, and maybe we're going to push these pedestrians over and force them off the sidewalk into our canopy. And so from that point, we can just, I always like kind of mapping out just the major constraints or the major paths. So in this case, we're going to be pushing people across the street to the other side and bringing them back. So bringing people along that edge. And we, of course, are using, there's arrows actually built into just this line type. It's a little tough to see with that background turned on, but you can see that these are actually arrows. And so that kind of adds a nice little flair to things, and it makes it a little bit thicker of a line work as when you're producing these into 2D plans. So, okay, so there we go. We have our pedestrian paths in there. We're essentially on all sides of our site. And let's add in, we can add in a traffic path. And so let's bring back our background. And so all the way from over here, we can add in our path, which essentially we're bringing people in this way. And we're exiting our site and continuing on from this point. And what I might actually do is I like having elements at the beginning and the exit for these plans, so that it's just like it's very apparent where people are going. So they can either go this way, or they could potentially turn and go north here. Probably a good time to add in some directional arrows as well. So okay, and then from here we can also add in just a path entering into our site. So there we go. And when we look at that in 3D, we can then see those elements turned on. And this is one of those cases where having the contours turned off makes them look a little cleaner in this case. So it actually looks like, depending on what your view is, it actually looks kind of like arrows. So it's a kind of a unique way of demonstrating and showing the 3D pass, but something that works pretty well for just getting the points across. And yeah, okay. So I think we got pretty much everything covered here. What else are we missing? I think that is essentially it. So, okay, so at this point we got it all, and what we could actually do if we wanted to bring all this back to Google Earth, we could actually do that in another manner. And what we could do is maybe we would just turn off everything and then bring in all the elements as its own model. So let's try that real quick. I'm going to hide this layer. I'm going to jump, actually let's just jump to one of our let's do the crane layer, and I'm actually going to go in, I'm going to just manually turn on all those other logistics layers that we had. We didn't do a whole lot with concrete pumping, but I probably would have added, created a separate view instead of those flatbed trucks having concrete trucks turned on. And so I'm going to then just hide that layer. So now we're just looking at our logistics, just our 3D logistics. And so from here, this might be a little bit of a heavy file. These trucks are probably really going to load things down. So it might be smart to get rid of those, because I think those are probably our heaviest elements. So that and the scaffolding and the cranes. But just for the sake of seeing how big this file actually is, let's just save this as a collada, and we'll just call this 3D logistics. In this case, we're exporting, so 3D logistics, and let's save that, and we'll see immediately just by telling how long this takes to save how big this file is going to be. So, because essentially what it's doing is it's taking all those objects and just mashing it up into one collada file. So we'll see this in a moment. Uh-oh. Whew. Thought we were almost going to black out there for a second. Now we're still live. I think we're still live. Hopefully. If not, I'm recording this. So, okay. We had a blank screen on both of my screens right now, so that was just a little bit scary, but looks like we survived. And okay, so that's 56 megabytes. That's going to take some time to bring that through into Google Earth, but let's just try it anyway. We'll just because I know we'll do it, but if we crash while we're doing this, then thanks for joining. But let's try adding this model and 3D logistics. Let's open her up. And so this will take a few minutes. So if you have any other questions, then feel free to type those in now. For those who joined us today, thanks for checking out this episode, which has been all about modeling things, modeling site logistics in ArchiCAD. There's a lot of other specific topics that we can cover relating to all these same things. I really like to dive into, and in some of these future episodes, I really want to bring in subcontractors specific to each of these types of trades, whether it's cranes, concrete placing, man lifts, scaffolding. We can bring in different contractors so they can talk about how they like approaching logistics and creating their 3D logistics plans. And so there's a lot of different discussion points and and a lot of different project types, obviously, that require different types of logistics. So looking forward to having more discussions on these topic points. And yeah, let's go back. I hear Google Earth working. It says it's not responding, but typically it says that when it's about to load it in. So we'll just let that go a little longer, and yeah, we'll see if that drops in there. Oh, it's saying there's an error. Let's ignore it and see if it keeps going. I'm getting this alchemy report handler. Don't tell me again and ignore. Okay, so that did bring it in. So there we go. So what I would do at this point is I would need to align this with my project itself. So I would want to turn back on my tower. This, yeah, it's a little heavy. I can feel it's a little bit tough to manipulate this one, but it still is working. Okay, there we go. So we're getting pretty close. I'm just looking at matching up kind of the corner of my site there. So that's pretty good. Let's hit OK. And okay, so there we go. We now have all those elements that we created in here just floating in space. But if we turn on our cast and place structure, it will give us the context. And okay, so there we go. Built some 3D logistics, brought it back into Google Earth, and yeah. So again, thanks everybody for joining. Next week we are going to switch things up a bit, and we're actually going to be building a hole in this case. And what I'm talking about is we'll be doing a deep excavation. So we'll be talking about shoring next week, and we're also going to talk about earthwork calculations. And yeah, we're going to build a hole next week. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Should be pretty interesting. And yeah, we'll talk all about shoring and earthwork methods and just building a site and a big hole. So, okay, well, thanks everybody for joining. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, we'll catch everybody next week. If you have more questions about what we do at ContraBIM here and want to learn more about the products and services that we offer, then make sure to check out our website. Again, if you're interested in using any of these files that we are building in these week-to-week episodes, then just make sure to yeah, look at the ContraBIM network as really a way of how we share all this type of content with other people who want to use this on their projects. So yeah, so there's a ton of stuff rolled into this whole ContraBIM system and template system. So definitely excited to be sharing that and getting some other people out there using it and seeing the benefits that they can get from using this type of system. So, okay, everyone, thank you for joining, and yeah, we will catch you next week talking about deep excavations and shoring systems. So, okay, I'm going to sign off here, and yeah, this recording should be published here very shortly. Thank you.